The jackhammer. So Grok 4.5 has been released, and this is a very exciting, arguably perhaps one of the most exciting Grok releases so far, because this model has been touted as being competitive with state-of-the-art models such as GPT 5 dot something and Opus 4 dot something. So it's not specifically known, at least as of till we scroll down on this a little, which models this is competitive with of the newest state-of-the-art, but we can see right here that this is hypothetically in DeepSui, and then SWE Bench Pro, which I do believe an article just came out about this maybe being a problematic benchmark that OpenAI had published. Don't take any of that beyond face value, but this seems like a very, very capable and performant model, something that is entering XAI, or SpaceX AI as they are now called, into the ring with the likes of Anthropic and OpenAI. Now, I don't know why I phrased it like that in a more like news story style. I did just wake up from a power nap, which is why I'm starting to film this a bit later than I would have likely anticipated. Mainly the thing is, interesting. It's good at coding in C++ as well, so we'll have to see how it does in our skate game test, but the inclusion of that so prominently does make one suspicious as to whether or not it's going to be pre-tuned to do well in that skate test. Regardless of that, the whole takeaway from this introduction section is that this model is one of the most competitive, if not the most competitive Groks that has ever existed, up to par with current or at least last gen state-of-the-art, which is very, very exciting, especially considering the pricing. Now, this is $2 per million input tokens and $6 per million output tokens. Now, if you go over 200K context, which we can see right here, the price does go up. So over 200K context for output is $12 and $4 per million in. So just keep that in mind. And we do have a bit of pertinent information about the model here. Now, in terms of some additional technical information about the model, the context window is 500K as they list right here. The modalities are text and image in and text out, so it can understand images if you share a photo, which can come in handy with troubleshooting specific things. Additionally, it has a bunch of tools capabilities, things like X search, which can be very useful depending on what one needs to use the model for. If you are doing market research or something for a brand, actually being able to use the model to search through X is very, very useful, and this is something I've mentioned in pretty much all of my Grok testing videos to date. So just based off of some information from X, this is a 1.5 trillion parameter model. Additionally to that, they will be extending the context length to 1 million over the coming weeks, and there is a 2 trillion parameter model currently in training, which will be finished this month and available to customers next month, which would be August. So it does seem like there's going to be a lot of activity from XAI. Additionally, the only other thing that I wanted to mention here is that it is listed to be roughly comparable to Opus 4.7, but much faster. If that holds up, that is fantastic, as I personally very much liked Opus 4.7 because it did include bullet holes in the subway FPS test. Now, because we're here, if you want to follow me on X, oh, that's not what I meant to click. It's just my name, @BJamboan. If you don't and you don't use this platform, understand. So for today, we're predominantly going to be testing this from within Grok Build. I find it's a pretty good CLI tool, and when it came out, I tested it and I liked it. So with that, I did begin the tried and true browser OS test v2.5 just when I started filming this video, so we can jump right into the result and take a look. All right, so here is our first Grok 4.5 browser OS result. Okay, Nova OS, we have a nice purple gradient, and I won't spend as much time on the browser OS results, but they're fun to include just to get a feel for any weird behavior, first and foremost. There's no where I click. So it does have the correct time and date in my locale, and let's take a look at our start menu. Okay, not bad. Reality warp, that's definitely going to be the special feature, so I'm going to hold off on trying that till the end, but let's just run through these one by one, starting with our GTA clone. All right, Vice District, start driving. That's actually, all right, so it's buggy. We're going to notice that, but it actually has some interesting graphical, just not 100% functional. This is multimodal. So we're going to just quickly do an inline multimodal coding test. So it finished in 1 minute and 53 seconds. I will just refresh this page and we'll launch that app again. Just do a right click. No, okay. I mean, there probably wouldn't have been, but I was just curious. Very good. Okay, it did fix it. I will say it looks less cool than it did before, but it is far more competently put together. Is that are those just like really tiny buildings, or are those supposed to be people? That's all right. We do have NPC vehicles. I did just hit one of them and it seemed to have disappeared, which was fine. Can I? Oh. It seems like hitting the vehicles is a replacement for running over pedestrians. Okay, and we got caught there and then we respawned at the beginning. Interesting. It's not the best I've seen, but it's not the worst. And we did need to have it fix an issue as well. So I'm just more curious about what these mini buildings are. But again, I don't want to spend too much time on this. I said I wouldn't, so. All right, let's just quickly outrun the 5.0. Next up, we have our second 3D game, Orbital Drift. Pilot a fighter through a dense... Oh, yep. This is a very, like, go-to result. Oh, what the... Okay, I have no idea what's going on here. It does have defined, like, ammo, but we're just getting, like, slapped by a bunch of... Oh, WS is throttle, A and D is to strafe. Yes, but very, very slowly. As if we are in like zero gravity with no real propulsion. Nonetheless, acceptable to 3D results. And all right, what is next? Notepad. Simple. I would like to see a save to TXT feature if I were to be totally wowed. But again, this is still like it's a new competitor in the ring. 5 times 9 plus 36. 91, 81. Good. All right. Wallpaper Studio. We have some gradients, or we can paste a CSS background value. Not bad. I like neon grid. And we can also just select a color. Oh, can we actually make a custom gradient with these two sliders? I think we can. That's actually cool. I don't know that I've seen a multi-RGB selector like this to create a custom gradient. All right, let's do something fun. It's like disgusting sherbet. All right, what is something that wouldn't repulse me? All right, so we'll go back to neon grid. Terminal. Good. So the way to tell if the terminal's kind of jank or not is if they have a visual text box right here that you have to type in. That's always a negative. This doesn't have that, so that's good. Help. Neofetch. Okay, Nova OS. About. Oh, and that opens the About app. That's actually kind of cool. And we do have, well, that brings us into our next thing anyway, which would have been the About app. So now that we're in here, I'm noticing some GPT-5.x looking UI just in this one specific window. Enter Reality Warp. It's a holographic 3D meta desktop. When activated, it lifts every application into a floating constellation of orbs in 3D space. Let's open some other apps so we have some things to try properly with our Reality Warp. All right, we have everything open. That's all right. You know what? It does work. So it's just a different take. This is more like an Apple Vision Pro thing. I am going to be mentioning the Vision Pro pretty often now because I have one. No. All right. Return to classic desktop. I do believe it said. And then calculator. Okay. So it's just a different visual way to see these things. Not bad, and it is also denoted by a little icon here in the bottom right just to show it's on. What happens if we click Nova Core? Okay, nothing. So that just is indicative of us. Interesting. All right, overall, nothing super special, but again, this is not going to show us really the depth of this model's capability. I do include it for nostalgic purposes at this point. All right, next up, I'm going to jump into a newer test. This is the 3D skydiving simulator. Now, I have appended one specific thing. If the parachute doesn't open, make it realistic, ... All right, our game is ready. It did do some preemptive troubleshooting just to ensure like proper QA, which is always nice to see. Okay, it's already running right here. Good. Here is free fall. Okay, not bad. It does start. We do have a plane. Oftentimes, oddly, the plane is not included. Now, we did also add to the prompt saying make it realistic if the parachute doesn't deploy. So keep that in mind. Okay, I'm not noticing any sound. The terrain is somewhat flat. mostly flat. Actually, I think it's just visually showing us that like there's patches of ground. We do have interesting clouds. We have a decent enough player model, and we do have the sensation of speed with the particles here. Now, my big issue is that there does not appear to be any sound, and that may be on me, so I'm going to pause this. And we do have W and S, so we can actually like control our player in midair. That's cool to see. Shift is to dive. And we do speed up when we do that. Let me turn this down just a bit. We have orbiting camera movement just based off of the mouse. So I'm interested in seeing what happens if we fail to deploy. Decision altitude, okay. We got a sound indicative of like, hey, you need to deploy this parachute now or else. We'll keep an eye on our altimeter. Oh, all right. That wasn't as bad as I feared it may be. No deployment. You hit the Earth at 128 miles an hour. Terminal velocity is not a metaphor. The body is not rated for this. Good. Okay. So it wasn't as potentially realistic as I had hoped it would be. But nonetheless, we'll now try it, but with the parachute deployed when properly being told to. I am going to speed up here. All right. All right, so our main has deployed, and I want to try the reserve chute. So here's reserve chute. That was actually pretty good. I've not seen that before, and the parachute is very. Oh look, the main one is falling. That's kind of cool. If we press it again, will it? Oh, reserve already used. Okay. I was just making sure it didn't just, you know. Alright, and when we flare, we can see the parachute actually changes in terms of its size, which is realistic, I think. I've never been skydiving. I don't plan on going. Oh, okay. Chrome has had an issue there because of the control key or something I pressed. And now we seem slightly out of control because Chrome messed everything up. Nonetheless, we are... Oh man. Okay. Good. Perfect landing. Right as Chrome was totally bugging out. Max speed. Okay. Overall, not bad. Alright, now in the meantime, because I know folks are going to be like, you should have tested this from within Cursor as well, which I agree. I gave it a sprite sheet. This is something I've used before in tests. So in this retro game folder right here, we do have this sprite sheet that was generated with some GPT image model. I've additionally given it the prompt that using the sprite sheet in this folder, make a 3D racing game with these vehicles. I want 3D models of the vehicles that are the correct shape for each individual car sprite, not just a 3D box with the sprite slapped on it, which has happened multiple times before. The theme of the game should be a Tokyo highway racer at night with fun sound effects, and polish that would be expected of a high-end indie game. And it does seem like it's already done. The entirety of this was concluded during the parachute game, so good. So it had been running the dev server, but we were unable to reach it. I did just give it a photo. I basically just sent it a screenshot of this, and it is now working around fixing it. So I did that on purpose because I wanted to ensure that one, multimodal coding test, and then two, that it was able to properly understand what was wrong and then fix it. All right. Neon Shuto. And I do have my speaker on. Tokyo Elevated Highway, Midnight Heat. I did tell it should have a Tokyo style. I don't know if I had mentioned that. Okay, click to unlock audio. Good, good. So far, so good. I like what I'm seeing so far. It did a good job of actually taking these sprites and slicing them. That's something that in the background, a lot of thinking has to go into that because this is not a traditional sprite sheet. So it has to figure out where the bounds of the cars are, and then it needs to properly cut them. Something that happens sometimes with that is that it will not include the windows or something. Depending on how it goes about doing it, it may use like a mask to try to keep the color, but the windows can be lost in that. Just from having done this before, this actually does not look too bad. All right, let's try the GTI, and they do all have speed and different like stats pertaining to the vehicle. No, I want to use the Viper. All right. Okay, yeah, this happens. You know what it is they're sideways. If all right, so I have a few things to say. The map is actually pretty good. The sprites, so let me turn this down a bit. It did attempt to properly wrap them around like the model of the vehicle. Hey, we're about to win. Oh, the Volkswagen Beetle's getting lapped. Okay, this is pretty realistic. Yeah, let's do some multimodal following up. And this will give us a test of some of its vision capabilities as well. Honest take, the highway vibe is there. Yes, I agree, but the cars look wrong. Also agreed. Their reading is a stack of overlapping flat sprites. They look shattered. I'd fix that by... The actual highway map, though, is not bad at all. Alright, apparently the vehicle models have been modified, so they're just a bit more realistic. Let's just jump back in with the same car. It might not look it, but that is actually significantly better. The big problem is they're sideways. Oh, hey. The Beetle right there actually showed rather well. So I'm going to give it another photo here because it does seem to work well based off of photos, which I like to see because it's also kind of a side test of its multimodal coding capability. So we'll give it that photo and then a little bit of additional feedback and we'll see what we get. All right, we should now have some properly oriented and more visible vehicles. Okay, we do. It's still not perfect, but it does show consistent improvement each time we're asking it more things. So this is actually close to pretty decent. I want to give it another chance because I think it can get it. I'm going to send that without any text because I want to see how it reads this. This will give us some insight into how it's actually seeing this image. If it looks at this and says, wow, the entire top of the car is missing, then it should be able to fix it itself. If not, then we can give it the follow-up of that. Sprite visibility remains poor. Push the face textures harder, especially in the car. Okay. All right, one more time. I want to just try this because I know sometimes folks want to see multiple attempts instead of just single shot ones, which I respect that and understand it significantly better. So the thing I'm going to take away from this, which is a difficult task, I've never had this properly done. I mean, even high-end GPT models, when I'd done this test, they basically just made cubes and then slapped the sprites onto the side of them, which was kind of funny. And then when we had it wrap them, it was more or less something similar to this. So this is really not a bad result considering the constraints of what is, I mean, like, look from right there. That's like, I mean, that's the Ferrari 308, I think. This isn't half bad. And the map is decent. Third place. Disgusting performance by me. All right. I like that. All right, let's do the Linux driver test. You know what? Before I do this, I'm going to stop the screen recording because last time we tried this, the screen went dark. So this is going to be the Linux driver test where we're telling it this computer, its name, the operating system it's running, and additionally the issue, which is that this keyboard is only set to orange when in Ubuntu. It should be able to be set to a number of different colors as it does work that way in Windows. So make a small utility so I can change the RGB colors of this keyboard. Now, I've tried this once before previously, which basically it was with HY3 from Tencent and it mistook the driver for the LCD backlight for the keyboard, so it just dimmed the LCD completely and turned it off. So that's basically like our baseline for performance in this test. All right, it's just going really fast, so I'm going to keep this on screen and monitor it, but we'll probably do some time lapsing and see what happens. I should also get another camera, but later maybe. Good, now I'll write a minimal kernel module, and again, it's going so quickly that I can't actually read it before it goes away. 4-zone keyboard RGB control, that is correct because this does have, so like imagine a keyboard and then cut it into 4 pieces vertically, and then each one of those slices can have a different color set to them. That is what it's referring to there as the 4-zone RGB control for the purpose of this test. I don't care about that. One static color being able to change from the orange would be perfectly fine. All right, it's loading module and it's going to cycle the keyboard colors. Let me get another camera real quick. Hopefully I can beat it. All right, so just for quick reference, I'm going to touch the keyboard, just like a random key. So we can, oh, it worked! Son of a, I know that it's genuine. This laptop has never had functioning RGB. It's always been orange, and it's been disgusting. And you can see my previous video for proof of that. Look at this. It actually did the 4 mode keys as well, because it's actually cycling through the colors in those individuals. Okay, this is impressive. This is actually really, that's really good. I think, right? I mean, my only experience with this previously is one, I don't think anything actually exists to have this specific keyboard and this specific laptop work in Ubuntu to have RGB control. Additionally to that, the only previous test I've done with this was with Tencent HY3. It's a 300 billion parameter open weight model, but still, it was not able to knock this out, especially with the quickness of what we saw here. So that's really cool. Autoload is configured. After a kernel upgrade, you can rebuild. So hypothetically, I should be able to use one of those commands right there. Let me open a new terminal and then try it. So I'm going to type that now. And it works. And it has a nice little sweep effect to do it. This is seriously, this has angered me for... I bought this laptop in summer of 2024. This has angered me for 2 years. Yeah, I didn't try that hard to fix it, but still, like, okay, now here's another thing. Let's try this. It always shuts off after, like, say 5 or 10 seconds. Let's have it try to fix that and just keep the keyboard RGB on permanently, set to blue, which is my favorite color. So I've sent it a follow-up here just to keep the backlight on all the time and set it statically to blue. So I'll also have my other camera here just in anticipation, hopefully, of this getting it, and then we see the keyboard flash on blue, and then stay. I'll update the module to add timeout control, disable timeout on init, set blue's default update CLI, and UDIV rule. Okay. All right. So we just saw that it changed it to blue, and now it should not time out. It would always time out like at least 10 seconds. Leave the keyboard idle for 15 plus seconds. It should stay lit. If it still dims, tell me and we can dig further. Okay. I guess we'll just wait a few seconds. All right. Yeah, that fixed it. That's awesome. That was awesome. And a test that I want to include more things like that because it goes beyond just the visual demos into more real world like capability. This was very, very good. Thanks. Hopefully when I close this, it does. Okay, good. The keyboard's still on, so we're good. All right, let's try a front-end test. So this is going to be the beautiful website for the Slapis watch company. It basically needs a good-looking 3D model of a watch in a hero section with a cinematic camera panning, and then 2 pricing cards also including 3D models of the watch. So not only does this need to make a good-looking front end, it also needs to make an accurate 3D model of a watch and have some nice cinematic panning effects, etc. And the keyboard is still lit up in blue, so that's cool. Just being able to like write drivers, and even if it's not a driver per se, being able to get things working like that so quickly with newer high-end AI models is really very, very cool in my opinion. All right, so this model is very quick and it took 11 minutes to do this site, longer than it took to actually like deal with low-level hardware on this computer to fix the backlight. So I'm expecting greatness. It did a lot of troubleshooting QA. Okay, so that's actually not bad. We have a moving second hand, which is not always the case. It does seem like it's gone for a rose gold aesthetic. Now, one thing I'm going to note, if I were to knock it, is the strap coming out the top of the watch here goes under the table, but it did create this little nice marble table it was referring to it as in its chain of thought when it was thinking. And we can move around this a bit. The dial face does say Slapis, and it even has Roman numerals. They are all oriented in the right location, so that's nice as well. We do have some reflective material here for the top. Okay, so far not bad. Oh, 18 karat rose gold. I was right. All right, let's take a look if we scroll down now. Good. Crafted where engineering meets poetry. This is a nice render here. Oftentimes we don't actually... Key shot, studio lighting. Okay, I like that. It's very literal. We do have the back of the watch as well. There is a bit of a bevel there. There's kind of some gaps here, but again, you know, it's not like... doesn't need to be a real watch, it just needs to look like one. And more or less this does. We do again have the reflective properties of the material. The second hand is moving. The crown is interesting. Now the pricing cards. Okay, the Solstice 36. Second hand is still moving. Oh, we can actually drag and move it around. That's cool. All right. And then we have a very minimalist strap there, but it does have the fabric like leather with thread through it, I guess could be said. $12,800. Good. The Azure Meridian, and it is a different color. This one's much simpler. Okay, as denoted by the significantly lower price there of $9,400, and it still does have a face. Slappus. The second hand is moving. All of the tick marks for the hours are correctly oriented. That's something that oftentimes can trip up models if they're not fully competent. I don't know. We have some floating oddities by the crown, but nonetheless, if I click that, it just sets it to auto rotate. Okay, and this is a decent front end as well, but more of the focus of this test is just on the 3D models, and really this is not bad. All right, now we're going to do the self-contained C++ skateboard game test. Oh, no, we're not. You're not using Raylib. Okay, so now it's going to make the self-contained C++ skate game right here. This is the one with the California boardwalk aesthetic, and this is always a test that's a bit more difficult than your average 3JS scene. All right, that was pretty quick. So we have an 1880 line result. I see some things there that will infuriate me, such as the seeming lack of a boardwalk. However, everything else there looked surprisingly good. All right, so we start off as the light post, which I don't want, but if we move, this is good. Really, look at all these pedestrians. There's many of them. All right, turn it into an FPS. No, the lights are nice. Oh, that's the sun. Okay, maybe the reflection of the sun. The water looks good. It's a nice, that almost looks more like Atlantic Ocean vibes to me than Pacific. But, you know, I digress. No, I'm kidding. That's not like a... All right, can we... Oh, the jackhammer. All right, good. We reset. The board model's not bad. The only real issue is we're moving the wrong way forward. Let's just try some tricks. Hold to charge for ollie, so... Oh. And we have variable height depending on how charged up we are for the ollie. That's kind of cool. The pedestrians are not bad with their walking animations. All right, Q and E. Oh, why do you do that to me? I want to put insane in the title, if nothing more than, like, I got this video out later than normal, so it'll help with the view count. But, like... Okay, the spin looks good. It's just that the tricks should be independent of... Oh, wow. All right. All right, here's what we're going to do. Because it's so fast, we're going to give a follow-up. All right, I've given it some follow-ups here saying the boardwalk is invisible, the player's moving the wrong way on the skateboard. I give it some weird description of the issue. Basically, the board needs to move forward, not sideways. The tricks move the entire player with the board. This gives like 100 billion parameter jank model vibes TBH, which is true. And there's a weird jackhammer thing when we are on the end of the rails. Additionally, I said that when we hit the pedestrians, I wanted to just yeet them with insanely hilarious force. So we'll see what changes it makes here. Pedestrian yeet. So that is now a feature, which is what we wanted. All right, first and foremost, the boardwalk is fixed. Is the skateboard going in the correct orientation? It is. Let's check our kickflip and things like that. Very good. Now the board is individually controlled from the player. Had this result been the first thing that we had seen, this would have been like quite solid. Now, of course, the feature that we're all curious about is if we hit a pedestrian, it is supposed to just yeet them. Oh, yep. Okay, good. Oh, they landed in the water. That's pretty much what I might have to include that in this test, right? Let's just yeet them all. Oh, and they disappear after they've been yeeted. All right, that's fair. I wanted to try to double yeet them, but the tricks are not bad. We actually have some pretty good defined wheels on this skateboard. Sorry, buddy. Did you see that? It added in like weird to the moon. It added in phrases to coincide with the yeeting of the pedestrians. Now, I told it also to fix the jackhammering that was occurring, whoopsie, on the rail. We do get points for yeeting these pedestrians. G is to grind near a rail. All right. Good. It fixed the jackhammering issue that was occurring. That camera movement when we actually snap onto a rail is wild. All right, this isn't bad. Are the stores inverted? Yep. All right. That happens more often than one would expect. So look at this. The storefronts actually were fairly defined. This really is not, this is not bad at all. I did give it a second chance just to put some pedestrian yeeting in. Let's see if we can yeet some into the water. Yep. Okay. Well, hopefully they can swim. So that was quite solid, actually. And it's fast too, which I like. Next up, we're going to give this a 3D model test. So I've told it I have a 280 size DC motor for my RC car. I want a 3D model of a V8 engine that I can place the motor inside to give a realistic engine bay look to my RC car. Now, I've specifically phrased it this way because I wanted to know, okay, this is going to be an RC car, so the motor needs to have the shaft outputted in a way that it can actually drive the wheels of the car. We want to see if it actually understands the things beyond the prompt in terms of the user intent when it comes to that, alongside just seeing how it does in terms of making a 3D model that is designed to fit a specific item. All right, let's take a peek at this. It basically does a lot of troubleshooting, I'm going to notice, and not even troubleshooting, but just looking at the result and then iterating based off of what it sees. So let's look at one of our preview photos. Let's just look at the, that's really, really good. That is that an oil filter there? Suspiciously good. Right. So here's our motor cavity, and it does have an output shaft there. I do see some floating items, but all right, I need to look at this in a, okay, so let's just look at it in OpenSCAD. It'll take a little bit to load in. That's excellent. That really is excellent. Look at that. It even put in the motor shaft as it would be. That is, it looks like a power steering reservoir, but I think that's an oil filter. Look, the headers look good. Even the fact that it did them. Okay, if I were to like totally nitpick, I'd be like, hey, the outlet for these headers is pointed the wrong way. It should be pointing down, unless this was a gasser build, maybe that way. But nonetheless, we have our oil pan. We have individual pieces here. It's interesting because some of like the 3JS results I've seen and things have not been mind-blowingly impressive, but then when it does stuff like this in the Linux driver test, this is beyond the capability of that I would expect for a model that is not like quite good. All right, here's what I'd like to do. And it also gives us some like tool tips here, like if you want to scale it to fit a larger motor or something of the sort. I would like to look, okay, motor fit jig. I don't know what this is. I would imagine this is probably something to help size or fit the motor. Nonetheless, it does not seem too important for what we're looking at right here. Yeah, so the motor would slide in there. All right, so one thing I'm seeing that may perhaps be an issue is unless the motor can drop in here, including the length of the shaft, and then be slid forward so the shaft comes out the front, it may be impossible to get the motor in. I'm not 100% sure about that, but nonetheless, it did actually put screw holes in here for mounting this properly, and this is not the altogether piece. Okay, we have a bit more odd kind of geometry and things like this, but nonetheless, this did quite a decent job at this task, I would say. The model's good. I've done this with GLM 5.2, and I think this definitely would beat that out just based off of my recollection of that result. I have also done it with Fable 5. Fable 5 was excellent, obviously better, but it was not a gigantic leap, at least in terms of what we see the visual design of this model being. I don't know how this would stack up in terms of is this realistically printable or not compared to what Fable did, but nonetheless, this did a nice job actually modeling this, and it was very competent in terms of the README it included, where basically it even included a license down at the bottom. Personal use and hobby use, modify freely for, okay, thanks. And then it has some other additional info here, like, okay, if you want to change this and modify it for a larger motor or something like this, then you modify this piece. Just kind of interesting to see. So this is definitely showing some capability. So the final test, which I ran from within Cursor, is going to be the subway station FPS scene. Okay, and I did just start it with the unified prompt, so why can't I? Oh, that's frustrating. Okay. Get the... You feel. Oh no, you fell. Fell. It's just weird. Look at that splash screen right there, like when we died and we see this weird zombioid thing in front of us. That is kind of cool. All right, let's try this again now that we have some moves. Now the big test. There's no bullet holes in the environment. The reload animation is good. Overall, this is like a real grimy and like creepy looking station. The columns look good with the tile material up them. The big problem is that the bullets don't make holes in the environment, which makes me very angry. We do have a subway car down there, probably a bit too small in terms of the scaling, but nonetheless, this is like a nice grimy scene, I guess could be said, and it's playable. It's not blowing me away, but it is also relatively competent, so that I'm cool with. All right, and that's going to probably bring us into the conclusion here, where I have some pretty simple takeaways, I think. When it comes to simpler 3JS stuff, like the skydiving game, not as much the Watch website, but this as well, I was not really blown away by its 3JS capabilities. It was good and it was competent, but it was nothing that would be like insane in all caps in the title. Now, where it seemed to have differentiated itself from those capabilities are with things like the Linux driver. This keyboard is still blue and it is like on still. That was something that it did very quickly, and that is not a trivial task to actually get that working. It's something that I don't actually think there's any one static solution online to be able to get the RGBs on this system's keyboard working. It did also understand that it is 4 zones, so it has 4 individual zones, and when it was changing the colors, it would actually kind of sweep the new color into each of the zones and then set it there. That was very impressive to me. In line with that capability as well, the 3D modeling ability seemed pretty good. That V8 engine that it created, it was not perfect, but I will say it was significantly better than what I had expected to see. And again, it didn't necessarily... Basically what I'm trying to say as a TLDR is that I found its capability with the Linux keyboard driver RGB test, as well as the 3D model of this engine, these capabilities were significantly better than what I saw it do with 3JS. Also, something I want to notice is it does seem very good at multimodal coding capability. So if you give it a photo of something, it does seem to get a good amount of detail to be able to understand what is wrong. When we created that Tokyo racing game, which I don't even know if I'm going to be able to run again because I think the server for it has been stopped, but we had to do a bunch of iterations on that where the sprites were messed up, and a lot of that revolved around just sending it photos of the result and then having it fix it based on that. I think it did a nice job of that, and I tried a test, I believe with GPT 5.5 Pro maybe, with that same sprite sheet, and this definitely was in the same arena as that in terms of how it actually worked with that, which was very promising to see. Additionally, oh, how could I forget? Our C++ skate game, where we had it, yes, this was a second try result, but still, it actually had some nice changes. And then, of course, the yeet effect was just the icing on the cake here. I very much enjoyed that and may have to continue to include that in some additional C++ skate tests. But still, overall, this is a massive, massive leap in capability comparatively to previous Groks. I mean, for the speed, the price, and the capability for this model, I think is going to make it quite a feasible option for a lot of folks. It is significantly cheaper than the state-of-the-art models from OpenAI or Anthropic, even when you go over that 200 and something K context length where the million input and million output double. It's still a pretty cheap option compared to the state-of-the-art competitors, as well as its performance and speed are very good. It seems competent is what I want to say, and I'm happy about that. I think it could use some work in like 3JS capability because it seemed better than it showed itself in 3JS, but in the driver tests and things like that, it was quite good. Now, of course, I quickly would like to check. So I put $10 into API credits. Now, when using this through Cursor, I had just used my $20 a month Cursor subscription. However, let's take a look and see how much everything that we ran from within Grok build cost us. All right, so the entirety of that testing apparently cost us $7.78. I am a bit confused right now because I only added in $10 to this. I did not add $20 in, but I used $7.78 for the duration of this testing, unless they had something that maybe they'd match the credits you put in. I have no idea. Don't quote me on that, but I did for a fact put $10 into this. So we use $7.78 throughout the duration of all of the tests done there through Grok Build, just to keep in mind for the pricing. So not super cheap, but again, comparatively to something like Opus, Fable, or 5.5, 5.6 tomorrow, this is a reasonable competitor. And that's probably going to conclude it. So if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments, and thanks for watching.